Hello and welcome to this, another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and you're listening to episode 155 with Blake Horn, DP of Mind, Body, Spirit. Enjoy.
Yeah, now that I think about it, the original C500 basically was built so that you could plug it into a codex and get the 4K raw.
Yeah, exactly. And then the Odyssey came out and it was just like, I forget how many, there's like a comparable amount. Yeah.
There's four. I have an Odyssey still.
You do?
Yeah.
They're great.
I love them. Yeah, I still deploy it. I mean, they're heavy, but like it's probably still one of the better monitors on the market. I mean, it's not on the market, but available.
Were you about to say I still deploy it?
Yeah.
I'm going to start using that. I've never said that. That's amazing.
Speaking of not record, I didn't record my. But yeah, no, I'll still bring the Odyssey out on. Especially because like the other ones I have are like the OG 702 Bright, which is like
let's go.
It's
changed the game.
Yeah, but that one's definitely hard to like check focus on, and then actually know a company that's made some really good monitors that obviously it's like the new Chinese tech is OC.
Oh, OC.
OSEE.
Okay, I think I've seen it on News Shooter, but there's so much good gear now. Everything, even like the knockoffs are good, and it's insane. I still rock it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you go to Cinegear?
No. I've only been to NAB once, like in 2018, but I've been just working so much I haven't had time to go on any of the trade shows or anything like that. But dude, I still rock like a 703 and a 503, and they're the best. And like that's it. Like everything's good now. Everything's good.
That's well, to the trade show point, you're not really missing much. It's the same. It's like everything's good, and every once in a while someone comes out with something new that's like mildly cooler, like Canon with that C400 is like, oh, triple base ISO, that's neat. And
I looked at the specs and I'm like, I wonder, I wonder if it's good.
I can say this because this episode won't come out for a while, but they're sending me to Phoenix next week.
I don't know what the Phoenix is.
No, they're sending me to Phoenix.
I don't know what Phoenix is.
Yeah, the middle of the country is very goofy. If you could call that middle. But yeah, they're sending me out there to go like, it's a press thing, but I looked at the itinerary and I guess they're going to give us one to like test, like go do a shoot day with it or something. So I'll have more info. It looks interesting. But again, it's like I have a C500 Mark II and a C70 and the C400 is like, yeah, that's real cool. I don't see the need, If you're going from like a DSLR
or a full frame, is it Super 35 or full frame?
Full frame, 6K, backside illuminated.
Sure.
Yeah.
The C70 is amazing. So is it obviously the 500 Mark II, but
the 70 special.
It is. I love that. I shot a whole doc on it like a year and a half ago, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. The only thing, there's two things about that camera I wish were different. And I told them direct. I know like some people at Canon, I told them straight up, I was like, if you make a C70 Mark II, literally all you have to do is make this screen more robust and give me SDI and we're done. And they said that's basically a C300. And I was like, okay.
They have so many steps to their camera.
They got to protect.
I love, I can do the HDMI train. I'm okay with it. It's never a deal breaker for me. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
it's fine. SDI is nice, but I can do HDMI.
Yeah, I mean the big upgrade, even from like, I think the 200, but definitely like the 100 and whatever was just having time code on it.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. That's surprising too, because it's like a little secret port on the front.
Yeah, right here.
Good. You're like, it's like, it's a very strange placement, but it works. It never got in the way for me. And, it's a great camera. There's no such thing as a bad camera now. Everything's good.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
That Burano is confusing, I will say.
Oh, dude, it's good. It's probably a stunning image. And I've never seen it, but
on a tripod, killer. There's only two things about that camera that are like stupid as hell.
Okay, let's hear it.
one, you need like a spreadsheet to know what formats you can record in,
Oh,
because like every format on that camera is a different crop or a different file format, or
sure.
if you get to a certain FPS, you have to switch around. Like that is incredibly confusing. And yeah, the rolling shutter on it is pretty
Oh,
poor. But
so
the only reason I'm bringing it up is just because like for 25 grand,
yeah.
like come on, you can't do that.
For for 25, you could get a mini V1 with 30,000 hours on it, but it'll still go.
For 25, you could get an OG Alexa. You could get 4 OG Alexas.
You really, yeah, that would be a lot of weight. Oh my gosh, those were fun. Those were amazing cameras. Like, they're still amazing cameras. That's so, like, it's hard to believe. Like, they're stunning.
Yeah. Do you get not on like your narrative work, but like when you're doing commercials or any kind of um those like smaller hires like I tend to do. Do you get requests for a camera? Do you get hired for a camera, or do they come to you with that?
Depends on definitely like the production company too. Like, some production companies are like, hey, we have all this in-house gear. We want you to use it, obviously, to not do a rental. And, I'm usually open to any camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's just a few that I'm like, this isn't really the right tool for the job. But now cameras are just so incredibly flexible. It's like you can shoot so much with an FX30. You can shoot so much with the C70. You can shoot so much with an FX6, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, if we want gimbal, we're traveling, we want this X, Y, or Z. I sort of picked the camera from there. But I'm super flexible with what camera it is. And I'm shooting a doc right now with an FX3, and I'm running my own sound, and it's working out. It's
Yeah.
like, this is really, I'm using the Deity Theos, which is fun. And
Love the Theos. I got one over here.
yeah, right. They're great. I love it.
Well,
It's so cool.
those with the time code boxes and the slate, like that ecosystem, being able to control it from the phone, sync everything with a button, mute talent from the phone. You don't got to go fiddle with them, change the gain. Like that's all sick.
It's really nice. It's like a huge upgrade. But, like, and then lenses, it's like, there's so many lenses now. I can't believe it. There so many anamorphic lenses, and everyone has like a different characteristic. I use the what are the white 1.3 squeeze full frame cover.
Oh,
They're um
I literally
not
actually
Vestids, not
no
Apollos.
shit. I literally just talked to those guys at Cinegear. I know who
Oh,
you're talking about. Whatever. Go to Pro Video Coalition. We have a video on it.
they're not DZO. Shoot.
That's
Well,
the
those
problem.
lenses, they're
There's a
T2s. What
I
is
was just
it?
gonna say there's 1,000 Chinese companies with lenses that are all like pretty good.
Dude, I loved them. I shot this like little short on them. They were so much fun. They were kind of great. And, they're big and relatively heavy, but they're not cooks. They're
Yeah.
not cook anamorphics. And you're like, these are great. And I don't know. It's a really exciting time to be a filmmaker. And like, you know, it's a challenging time to be, I think, like a rental house right now,
Yeah.
because like so Mind Body Spirit, right? It's like we originally went to a rental house. We didn't want to shoot with a big camera. We wanted a little camera. We wanted something that sort of looked like it could be shot by someone at home. So we used like a Blackmagic 6K Pro, and I used that on a big travel gig the year before. So I was super comfortable with it. Or actually a 6K, not a 6K Pro, but only upgrades. And when we went to a rental house with like what we needed and what we wanted, it was like not the build at all that we wanted. It was so much more expensive, and we just outright bought the camera and the entire kit.
Yeah.
Because now it's like every like little camera is like obviously like an Airy, or I guess you could even argue not a Red, but a Red or a Venice. It's like, you're not going to try to put that on RS2, right? It's like you're going to be using traditional Steadicam or a larger gimbal or a Dahlia Fisher or whatever you have it.
That Raptor is surprisingly small.
The Raptor is small.
The Raptor is kind of rad, and I've never really been a big Red fan, but I think the Raptor was their first actually excellent camera.
The Raptor feels like a camera.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a computer.
Yes.
The
100%.
Komodo, dude, the Komodo is so sick. Like the Komodo is amazing. It's tiny. It's so small.
If I could find one for like 1,000, I would just buy it. Like I don't need one. That's the thing but I suddenly have started just collecting stuff.
Oh, that's
Stuff.
my life. Yeah.
So now it's like I kind of want I want an OG Alexa. I want a Red One, literally just for the shelf.
That's a crazy one. That's a crazy one to get.
Yeah, but the Komodo, I think like if it was affordable enough, I would just like pick one up because there's so many uses for it, and the image is great, and you get red raw, and it's like
they're like little rippers. I love them. And the Raptor is amazing.
Yeah,
the Raptor is a really cool camera, and you're like, oh, it's the SDI is where I thought it should be, rather than like, dude, Epic X's. You're like trying to so hard to get it in there. You have to turn off the camera, take off the battery, take off the plate, and then put in your SDI because it's just like so challenging to reach.
Yeah. Actually, my buddies over at this company, Mutiny, make a really great little backpack for, I think the Raptor and the Komodo, but it like gives you a bunch of power ports, extra, like I think SDI, a battery plate that's not sideways, so you can put like normal they have an adapter where you can put like DeWalt 12-volt drill batteries on it.
I love this.
Because I thought it was so stupid at first, not stupid like dumb, but like stupid funny. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, if you're on a documentary in the middle of nowhere, somebody probably has a drill battery. Right?
I want to know who has used that and it saved them in a pinch. Like I want to know.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that online before, and I was like, this is interesting and it's cool. And that's actually you would look that would be a talking point. Shooting like a DeWalt battery. That's cool.
Because I'm always like one reason why I like shooting cameras with SD is if you forget the media, chances are you can find a store that's got like even Walgreens probably has SD cards.
It's crazy.
So it's like if for batteries, like you can't, finding a V-Lock's impossible, but even just the BPA or what, the MPFs, that's impossible. But there might be a Home Depot near you.
Yeah, that's a vibe. That's a rad vibe for sure.
So did you say you shot Mind Body Spirit on a 6K?
Yeah, 6K Pro.
No shit.
Yeah, so we didn't want a big camera because we wanted the flexibility of first off, it's low budget.
Right.
I really like the images out of Blackmagic's, really like the 6K Pro.
Insanely gradable.
Yeah, it's really nice. We shot 6K RAW, which wasn't even that large, to Samsung 1TB SSDs, so super easy. And we knew that we were gonna have moments where the camera like falls over and then gets picked up by the character, which is, them holding onto the bottom of like on a handle, but it gives it the idea.
Yeah.
We wanted something with a larger format or a larger sensor size, but not full frame. We wanted Super 35 because the lenses that we we use a Tokina 11-20 for most of it.
Those Tokinas are nice.
Great lens. It's super nice. And we didn't go cinema. We went stills.
No shit.
Just because it's like, we're never really going off of marks. We don't have any crazy pulls, especially with, we're shooting 2.8. A lot of it shot on 11mm, which was fun.
Yeah.
And then we had a Sigma 18-35.
In my opinion, the best lens, probably top 5 lenses ever made.
It's amazing.
I cannot find a reason to not use that if that's the focal length range I need.
It's beautiful. I love the look of Sigmas. I love the look of that lens specifically. It's so small. It's really inexpensive. It's really fast. But we use the Sigma only a few times because most of it we want to have that deeper depth of field. Yeah. We want to look like a YouTube video, but we wanted like elevated YouTuber kind of vibe. And that a lot of that play was like with our lighting. And then we knew we were going to use the RS2 a lot, the gimbal. for some motion control stuff, for some, we have those 360 pans in the movie. Um, and then we had like traditional gimbal of it actually moving around. So we wanted something that could sort of like fit on all these little small, fast, really fast tools. And the 6K was like the FX3, I forget if it was out at that time. This is 2021, end of 2021. So maybe it was actually. But I was just so comfortable with the Black Magics.
Well, but also it took Oren to fucking shoot the creator on it before anyone went, oh, real camera, you know.
I love, dude. Arn's a buddy of mine. We met on these. It was either Revlon or L'Oreal commercials in New York back in like 2014 or 2015. And it's so exciting to see his career explode because he really deserves it. He's such a talented cinematographer and a really nice person.
I had him on the podcast like 4 months ago, something like that.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
I taught a class at Cornish College here in Seattle, a summer program last summer, and I had him zoom in and talk to the students. It was so fun. It was really, really fun. But yeah, that FX3 is, I'm shooting with it now. It's great bump for Sony.
Yeah.
And the movie looks stunning. It looks so good.
You mean creator?
Yeah.
Yeah. He told me a trick because I've seen the Sony footage out of that camera. The Sony footage. I've seen the footage out of that camera, and I was like, it doesn't, like, what did you guys do in the grade to change this up? Because it doesn't look like what I'm used to seeing. And he said that there was like a few things that they did to I think they had like a sick colorist on it. I can't remember who it was. But he said one thing they did is they like just squeezed everything. I've started doing this on literally everything I do now, is like they squeezed it. Do you use Resolve at all?
A tiny bit.
So I don't know if this is what they did, but this is how I interpreted what he said, and it looks good. So whether or not it's the same thing or not, whatever. But basically, I take the color warper and I just move everything into ostensibly cyan and skin. So like you take any image and then you color warper, grab all the edges and just push them so that the vector scope shows skin tones and cyan. And then if you drop that down to like 30% intensity or whatever, node opacity or whatever, it just kind of pulls all the colors ever so slightly more squeezed, more like film tends to do.
Interesting.
You know how film doesn't show, like digital will show you every little nuanced little color and everything, and film is a little more, what am I trying to say? Like gentle.
Sure.
Skin tones will just kind of become one thing versus blotchy. So yeah, that was one little trick I learned from that film that I was like, oh, I've started doing that on fucking everything because it always looks good.
I love that. That's such a nice hack.
Yeah.
There's so much that you can do. It's like really unique, right? It's like you're shooting digital to replicate film for a lot of instances, which is, the irony there is so potent. Digital, dude, it's just insane how much information you're getting with digital and how you can manipulate an image just so much.
Yeah. I did want to ask about like I told you earlier, I'll just jump around a lot. So you had mentioned the lighting. I did want to ask about Mind, Body, Spirit. How did you justify is not the right word, but like make the decision on where the line was between your lighting and the character's lighting? Because for people who don't know, there's a found footage movie, so ostensibly it's all supposed to be her doing. So like, where did you draw the line between you being the filmmaker and her being the filmmaker?
Yeah, great question. So we made a few decisions of, you can call this found footage. And then what is the other genre that's like now like sort of percolating in the horror subspace? It's like, I forget what it is, but we wanted to blend this line of like, okay, is someone like who uploaded this footage?
That was my other question.
How did it
there's ads in the movie, quote unquote ads.
Yeah. The ads are really fun. But for her lighting, we never show any like actual diegetic lighting units in it, right? We don't ever show the ring light hanging out when the camera moves around. So in those instances in the film, it's like we knew in the beginning we wanted to make it look more like a YouTuber lights it, like flatter lighting that's um within the world that she sets up. And by the end, we want it to be more natural light, way moodier,
Way
deep
more contrast.
shadows. Yeah, yeah. And throughout the film, it's like, okay, the first shot that we set up, and we shot the film almost totally sequentially. It was like, okay, let's make this like a little flatter. Let's make this look like a YouTuber lights it. And a lot of the decisions with my gaffer and I is thinking like in the moment, but also how are we going to change it later on and down the line. And we had a whole lighting plan throughout the whole film, but obviously, your plan always lights on fire and you always have to sort of figure it out. But always thinking about, okay, we want this like a little bit flatter. Our ratio isn't, our shadows aren't that deep, if not at all. And then we have moments of, we go from that moment into this room that an on-camera light turns on, right? Which I love whenever I get to use an on-camera light and the flat lighting, and you put a little bit of black wrap on and make that little vignette. Like, I don't know, I love that.
Especially for horror.
Yeah. Just like you can hear it. It's like you can hear it turn on, and like that stuff is so fun to me. And then we have like the attic scenes and trying to figure out like, like is the attic lit by like a space light, not space light, sorry, a skylight, or is it the on-camera light? So making those decisions and just trying to figure out, okay, how do we want to like hide the horror? And a lot of what Matt and Alex wanted were these empty door frames. Like throughout the shooting, they're like, oh, like we want this frame to be empty, empty door frame, empty door frame. And I was like, okay, like, sure, yeah, I see it. And it's always interesting when you're like on set when you shoot something versus when you see the finished product, just because like so much time has passed that you like forget all those like details of actually shooting it. And I remember seeing on the big screen and being like, ooh, those empty door frames.
Well, the reason I just got a little geeked out was because I wrote down like you guys did a great job. I literally wrote doors, chairs, etc. Because there's just all these little things, especially like in one instance, she's going up into the attic and you see the lady like behind the stairs. Like, you didn't see that bitch. Like, but there's so many little things, and like an open door frame for horror is such a great tool because it's like something's gonna come out of there, and if it doesn't, it's scarier.
And that's like
when is it gonna come out of there?
Yeah, and building that tension for like a long period of time, and then finally having that payoff is so fun. And working within the genre of horror, it's like horror is so interesting because like people who are going to be watching this are fans of horror.
Right.
This isn't necessarily a movie for I don't know, like an not traditional audience, but it's not a movie for everybody, right? But for horror fans that know horror, that love horror, I think this is a really fun movie. And it's always fun to play within genres, right? And then to tweak, like build the rules so then you can break them kind of vibe. And like Matt and Alex, the directors of the film, and we're all horror fans. It's like it's so fun to like reference horror and like you're on set being like, oh, like it's feeling like this movie, or we want to channel this movie. And we're all movie lovers, so it's so fun just to have that dialogue and that communication together.
Yeah, the horror is one of those unique genres. I'm not necessarily a horror fan, but it's one of those unique genres where I feel like the reason it's so successful, especially now, is because it feels like, what the closest thing is, like Marvel films, in that the people who go to see those movies know the formula and they want to, and subversion of that formula or playing to it or whatever is like important, like superhero film. Like horror is the same not objectively, subjectively, like the same movie every time. What's going to happen. So it's like if you both are speaking the exact same language, the filmmaker and the audience, you get to have a lot of fun in that space in the middle.
And like in film horror, like elevator horror, and you can really credit that to A24. And like, I remember like the Babadook, which is not A24, coming out in like, what was that, 2013? It was such a fun callback to like the golden age of Hollywood and 1970s horror. And like you see like The Exorcist and R.I.P. Donald Sutherland. What is Don't Look Now? Is it Don't Look Now, Don't Look Back?
That is a film.
Yeah, yeah. And The Omen and
Yeah.
like all these movies, like it's so fun to like have the slasher gratuitous violence film sort of like subside and then using horror as his vessel to communicate human emotions. Like It Follows and her obviously
Yeah.
Hereditary, which is the GOAT. And I don't know, it's really exciting. It's really exciting to be like a horror fan and a horror filmmaker because there's just so much more opportunity.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I love genre films in general.
Mm,
And I think that is the fun part of genre is like because there is a framework, it makes it I think more fun than starting from scratch. The classic thing of like limitations make your job almost easier.
yeah.
Like what Adam Savage says, like anytime a limitation is put on you, it's like hacking a limb off your decision tree. That's easier, versus like here's a blank page, make something. Like what do I
It's
do here?
overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is nice to have barriers or just bumpers, like I guess you could say like bowling, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's nice to have parameters that you work within because yeah, limitations always breed creativity. Always, 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 always.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Hereditary. This film definitely has some like Hereditary kind of vibes to it for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Family trauma. Hereditary was a huge reference for us in making the film. So it was fun to see like reviews come out and people comparing it to Hereditary because that was fun. I
Mm.
was like, oh, this is, it makes you feel like you've done your job. And Hereditary is just a wonderful film. It's
Yeah.
not even a wonderful horror film, right? Or it is, but it's more than that. And I think having that transcendence is so exciting to see. And there's a lot of themes that are similar with inherited family trauma, um and just like that movie's so cool, like these like weird frames that make you feel like you're in a miniature,
Yeah.
and like that stuff is so fun and motivated and so exciting to watch. And with Mind Body Spirit, um it was so unique because it was like, oh, we get to like make this look whatever we want it to look like. Like we kind of don't want this to look like a movie. There are some frames that were like, let's make this a little more cinematic in the respect of like our lighting is telling the story. We have deeper shadows. Our We're having fun with our Dutch angles as if like she threw the camera over. And it
Mm.
was so freeing to be like, there's not this really stringent idea of where the camera is, how it's turned on, who's sort of recording. We never really have her like beep, like record and walk back and
Right.
hi there, how are you? And then hit the cut button. It was like it was very freeing just to be like, who cares? Like our audience is so unbelievably aware of what the genre is screen life, what
Mm.
YouTube videos look like. We're
Like
surrounded by
searchers or
people.
whatever. Not
Yeah,
what was it? Searching.
Searching. Oh, great. Love that movie.
Yeah.
Really good movie. Really good movie. But just like Searching, we're surrounded by media, right? It's not just CCTV cameras, but screen here, camera there, everywhere. We're totally surrounded by it, for better or for worse. And thinking about our audience and being like, they're smart. They like no one's gonna care who really turns us on. And I think having that ambiguous nature also makes it more voyeuristic. And
Yeah.
of being like, who is watching Anya right now? Is it her recording herself? Is the camera turning on randomly? Is it the spirit of Arasha that's possessing the camera and watching her? Is it this person watching this video on like the dark web? Like, where is it? And having fun with that perspective, I think was just like it was really flexible and really exciting for us to have those conversations on set and use that as motivation of, oh, is the camera toppled over a little bit? Is the camera more head on? Like, where is the camera and why?
Yeah. I actually did want to ask about that because at one point I think I wrote down spooky drunk steady cam op. Like,
Yes.
like, so I don't know if you guys actually like hammered this down, but I was wondering what is the motivation for the spirit to record all this? And like, why does it care that it's recorded?
I love that. I think to put it simply is like the torturing. It's like this spirit is slowly possessing this character of Anya, and I think it's malicious. It's not, it
Got
is
it.
totally devious. It enjoys watching this person succumb to these nightmares and this person, um, yeah, for lack of a better word, being tortured. And I think it has this insidious nature to it all. Um, and yeah, I love that question so much because then as a filmmaker, and specifically a cinematographer and operating the camera, I'm like, oh, this is fun. I'm not this omnipotent being right now. I'm actually playing the character of the spirit, of the ghost, of this, and how would I move and what would I look at and where would I go? Was really fun.
Yeah.
And it was like I was like, "Ooh, I'm playing a character right now," and I felt like an actor, which was really, it was really, really fun. Those moments were a blast.
Yeah, because it does like give you the feeling of like, oh, this person. It makes total sense. You said malicious because a lot of those like ghostly camera framing changes do feel like fuck you, like ha 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 ha. It feels joyful in the fact that it's going to mess with this character.
100%. And I think that's like there's this really wonderful, well, just this connecting moment of when I was with Sarah, who plays Anya,
She did
and
great, by the way. She's perfect,
oh,
perfect casting.
Sarah's amazing and such a pleasant person to work with and so talented. And I don't know if we ever needed to do a second take because of her. Like
Mm.
she was so, oh, she's amazing. Just such a wonderful, talented artist and so cool with all of her other endeavors of like dance and choreography and just such a, vibrant person to be around. But there's a moment where like we're in between takes and the two of us are like, I'm like behind the camera, she's in front, and we're like going through a rehearsal. Everyone's like bustling around, and the two of us just have this moment of looking at each other and be like, this is really sad.
Mm.
Like we both have so much empathy for this character because she's just like, we know where it's going and it's not good. And it's like pitiful. And it's uh and I think that's what we're like always with the film and with Matt and Alex, it's like we're trying to toe this line of like having sympathy for this character, but also like this cringiness with this character of like trying to be someone that she's not. And then having a lot of like fuck you moments
Yeah.
of and like it's not just like a fuck you to the I don't think it's ever like really a fuck you to the audience. It's like kind of like a fuck you to like the influencer mentality. It's a fuck you to this like terrible spirit, but it's also like this fun like fuck you to like let's just see where this if we pull the string, where does it go and how far down this rabbit hole can we go?
Literally at one point.
Yeah, the string. Yeah, the was that the cleansing or yeah, I think that
Yeah,
is
the
the cleansing.
second one. Yeah, she does the breathing and then the string.
Yeah, yeah. Which yeah, that one's gross. That one is just
It's pretty gross. I
yeah.
did actually want to ask because that leads to the question of like VFX and stuff. But there's obviously there's like a pretty extensive like split comp scene, which I think if
The
you
many, right?
yeah, where they're all running around and whatnot. I'm trying to be ever so slightly nebulous just in case people haven't seen it.
Sure.
But at one point I did want to know if this was, I hate to say it, but if this got away for you or if this was like intentional, because I found it spooky, even if it wasn't intentional. Because during towards, I was looking at the light. Obviously, I'm watching this as from a cinematography perspective, so I do want to get into the lighting of like that main room because obviously it changes all the time and yada yada. But at one point, I think it's when she's like chanting. At one point, there is towards the beginning, there's like a reflection of someone in the floor.
Yeah.
Was that intentional or did you chop someone out?
Well, it's super intentional. It's
Okay.
but yeah, it's a composite. So like
Okay.
we shoot her, don't move the camera, they clear out. We have our actor go in, and then we just take that out, and so it's just what's left is the reflection in the wood. It's like the
Got it.
sheen of the wood, and then we have that And that was like, it was very much so like we thought about having that during in pre-pro with the shot list and being like, I think this actually will work, and then getting on set and being like, oh, this is like so much easier than we thought. Like it didn't really require that much of a lighting change. It wasn't like we had to do a special. It's just backlit, the angle of the camera, and finding that to figure out the very beginning of the shot, and then finding that sheen, and then just letting it sort of like roll through.
Got it. Yeah, because the what happened was, I'd be taking notes when I'm watching, and so like
the smallest note card. That's so rad.
What I have found is this. What is this? The Rhodia dot pad number 12 is the perfect amount of notes for a 1 hour conversation. If I fill this up, I know I've got a full. If I've only got half of it, I really got a vamp. But
yeah.
But what was happening was, so I was like, I looked down to write something, and then I look up, and I just see the reflection go back into the stairwell, and I went, wait, and I had to like rewind it, and I found that happening a lot in the film, where like I'd look up, and there was just something in the corner, and I went, wait, hold on, and I'd have to like, obviously you should be paying attention when you're watching a movie, but you guys did a good job of like hiding these little moments in there that aren't necessarily, they don't have attention brought to them, but are just there enough to be spooky and effective and interesting.
Yeah, and we thought about again, we thought about our audience for this. It's like we want to give people these like little Easter eggs, these subtle, like, one person notices it, but the other person doesn't. So it's like, did you see that? They're like, what are you talking about? And like having those like little like moments we have throughout like the entire film and sprinkled through, and it just causes that eeriness, and Matt and Alex were so smart with where they placed it, how they placed it, and what they didn't place as well. It's like, looking at the door frame, you don't see anything, but then you return to it. Because a lot of this film is like returning to the locations, right?
Right.
It like the beauty of the production of it all was that we loaded in one day, shot, and then loaded out the last day. So there was no like big company moves, and we had a huge room that we could stage all G&E and camera and production and costumes, and we never had to shoot in there or move it, which was, oh my gosh,
dream.
It was like a studio, right? And it was like, and then like running around the house, but always thinking about, okay, we're shooting this location, and there is one main location that we're in, and how do we want this to evolve, and how do we want this to change, whether it's the lighting or having like in the sheen of the floor, having a shadow appear and then disappear, and thinking about that holistically throughout every single scene, and what have we shot already, and what are we shooting right now, and what are we going to shoot in the future.
Yeah. The production design in general, I mean, you got a great house, but I did want to know about that main room, I guess specifically, but in general, like what was your like lighting package, and how were you approaching control in that main room? Because that main room is just all windows. So it's like, what, were you just going with the sun and punching from like the roof or something, or like how are you setting up that main room as you went through the film?
Totally. We just had an M18 on the outside, and the sun was backlit for a few hours each day. So we would really shoot scenes with the sun coming in, and then without the sun, we would use the M18. And the first day we recognized that the windows were blowing out pretty substantially. And we eventually ND'd the windows, which obviously, old school style. And then the M18 had enough punch, just like sort of even pushing through those NDs, which was really nice. And then on the inside, we used, I think like an Aperture 300, sometimes with the softbox, sometimes nothing on the inside other than like negative fill or just passive fill. So we were always sort of playing with it. The tricky part was when we did the 360 pans,
right?
We would have to basically like hide a light on the top, like bite it with a cardellini and then hide a light on the top of a door that was open. Even though it was like, I wish it would be on the other side. It was like, okay, I'll compromise and put it on this side. But always trying to it was fun to be like, okay, this setup we can do stands, and this is really easy. And other ones we have to really be flexible with where we are. And then subtly changing our focal length as well, of like being wider and closer or more telephoto, which is literally like 3 or 4 difference, like from 11 millimeter to like a 16 millimeter, and then pushing in or pulling out depending on our focal length.
Yeah. So your lighting package was pretty small then?
Yeah, we had. Oh yeah, we had these like mole Richardson LED lights that were just like terrible, but they were really inexpensive.
Yeah.
We had an
I
M18.
didn't know they made LEDs.
Oh, back in the day they did. They made this one cool one called a tenor, which was this enormous LED. We did not have it on this shoot, but they had like smaller LEDs. So it was basically think of like a 650 Mole Richardson, but instead of the maroon color, it's black and it's LED and it's green and it flickers really badly if you dim it down on it's like a built-in squeezer. So
Oh,
those lights
geez.
were pretty interesting. And then we had the Aperture 300s, which are great lights. And then we had this Aperture. It wasn't an MC, but it was like one of their older for the on-camera light. And then we had some tubes, I think, at one point.
Everyone's got the tubes. You always have the tubes.
Oh, always. Like I don't leave the house without like a tube light, a 6x6 Ultra Bounce, just rag that I always keep in my kit. What else do I always bring? I have an MC Pro that I always bring now, which is wonderful. And and then the B7Cs. Those are great lights too.
Sure.
Those are really helpful.
Yeah.
Super helpful. And then yeah, so tiny lighting package, the gaffer, key grip. Trying to think anything else off the top of my head. But
You
yeah,
did,
super
you did
small.
great work with that limited of a kit, because I would have guessed you were like really, popping stuff everywhere and shaping the hell out of it. But I guess it goes to show that it's always like, the Gordon Willis thing of like one light, just have one.
Thank you for the compliment. That's a great compliment to hear. And yeah, this, the longer you go, it's like the less lights that you're putting up, the more shaping that you're doing. And I shoot a lot of documentary as well. So
Right.
I like to light fast and I like to not overthink it too much and think it holistically and like what is actually realistic here. And it's like you can't always have a 4K outside. You can never have an 18K, or at least I can never have an 18K outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But lights now are like insane. Like the Aperture 1200, it's like, and now they have the 2400. It's like, it's crazy. Oh, for this, it was the first thing to go budget wise, but we really wanted to play with the CTRL light bridge.
Oh,
CRLS.
CRLS.
CTRL is Teradek. Yeah, we really wanted to play with the light bridge, but as your budget just like slashed right away.
It's so funny because I've gotten to know those guys a little bit because of trade shows. They're owned by Matthews now, which has made them a lot more accessible. But back when they were alone, it was like when they first announced, me and everyone I knew was like, that looks cool. Can we try that? And it was basically like, no.
They just don't have them.
No one had them. You couldn't rent them. And they didn't seem interested in getting them to you. I remember this was not CRLS's fault, but I remember they were hooked up. I won't say who it was, but they were hooked up with another company that had an office near me. And I didn't never told you this. I write for Pro Video Coalition. So I do like,
very cool
stuff like that. And so I wanted to review these reflectors. So they're like, oh, we have a office in Santa Monica. You should go down there. So I was like, okay, cool. This guy had like a lighting company that he was like attached to CRLS with. And he spent like 3 hours telling me stories about his cool lighting company and showing me his lights. And at the end of it, I was like, so can I borrow like a kit to review? And he goes, no. Great. Thanks, bud. But yeah, now they're with Matthews, and it's pretty easy to get a hold of some. But they do. It's fascinating how much every DP I know like really wants to test them out if they haven't used them, and it's like we've had reflectors before. Why are we suddenly really excited about these? Like, what is it in our brain that just goes, oh yeah, I want a bunch of little ones?
Because they have baby pin attachments, and you can like put it on rather than like gaff taping a pigeon plate on, and then the DIY. And it's cool. Like it's really cool. The 1, 2, 3, 4, and like one's like it like actually is a different quality of light. And it's
Yeah.
like, it looks real. And you're like, what is going on here? This is such a crazy, and it makes so much sense because you're backing the light up, but really you're not. So you're like, you don't have light loss, but you do have like the inverse square law in your favor. And it's like, whoa, this is fascinating.
Yeah. I think it also goes to show that we all secretly do like hard light. And this soft light thing is new. Even though
Hardly.
it's like 20 years old, but 20, 30 years old, but still.
I know you can't
Kinos came out and we
break
were all just like
everything.
soft forever.
Yeah, it's no, it's so unique because like especially with narrative, it's like your quality of light, but also like how do you make this look actually realistic, or how do you cater this to your story? Like, do you want it to look artificial? Do you want it to be natural? And what does natural light actually look like? And natural light isn't always a character with this beauty light on their face illuminating them all the time. Like that doesn't really exist in the real world. You get those moments, which I think is like what you're always trying to recreate with narrative. It's like you finding that moment where it's like actually um, evoking an emotion visually and really, playing those internal emotions externally.
Yeah.
And it's so different than documentary where like, all right, let's just rip this light. Or now it's like I find myself like so frequently with documentaries and being like, let's just find the moments rather than like trying to like light it super hard, or honestly you just turn off lights.
Yeah.
And then it's like your sensor is so sensitive to light now with modern day digital cameras that you can really get away with a lot, even at like a 2.8. Like you're not even like having to open up all the way, or with zooms you are in that respect. But yeah, I want to start shooting documentaries more with primes. Like I,
Yeah.
I just want to do the commitment because whenever I review my footage on the Zoom, I'm like you dog that one. Like that
Yeah.
that was so unnecessary.
Well, and I think so. I will say all the documentary DPs I've interviewed have all almost exclusively shot on primes. And these
Yeah.
are all usually like award-winning films. But I think personally, when you have a zoom in a doc situation or even like just event coverage, anything like that, you because you're trying to anticipate so much, you you're thinking about zoom too much. You're like constantly worried about whether or not your frame is good. Whereas if you're on a prime, all you got to worry about is focus and then just physically moving, which is a little more you like you can feel where you're supposed to be. But if you have a zoom, you're like checking it out. You're like, is that good? Is that good? Is that good? Whereas like otherwise, if it's a prime, you just kind of instinctually move into the right spot, in my opinion.
No, and I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like limitations, like add that limitation on. And I've tried to like use a zoom as if it's a prime in docs. I've used zooms in like commercial and narrative and use it as, a prime, which makes sense. But in doc space, you're just like, I think there's just like subconscious decision that you make, or that that you can actually change your focal length right
Yeah.
now. So I think that's different when it's a prime and you're like, I cannot change this. And so what am I going to do now? What am I going to think about now?
Yeah, it hacks a branch off the decision tree. You don't have to think about it. It's gone.
I love that. Yeah, I want to start doing that more frequently.
Or just like, yeah, I think like limiting gear always like, oh, let's get another light in here. That's the death of you. That's going to be another 30 minutes. And then you realize you don't want it, like,
Terrible. It's like always like thinking about lighting and communicating with my gaffers and key grips. It's like, this is like what I know we're going to need. This is what I have no idea about. Can you help me? And then like humor me with this. It might be a bad idea, but let's see. And uh, oftentimes it might work, but it's always like clear communication, right?
yeah,
It's like verbally communicating and doing the prep beforehand with your team and like giving them the idea so that you're both on the same page, you're both working in the same brain space rather than like dictating or yeah, just having clear communication so that you're just like working together, honestly.
Yeah. Was there anything on Mind Body Spirit that like you learned? I feel like every project you end up learning something or failing, and that's also a lesson.
Oh, dude, learned so much. When originally Matt and Alex approached me about found footage, I was like, okay, and it turned out to be so creative and so much fun. I learned for sure about like light fall off and thinking about like, oh, like you can play more in the shadows than you think you can. Uh,
Right.
what else did I learn? Yeah, dude, just a team effort of like when you have like a great crew, like a lot of this is because of the costume and production design and the art department. And it's like mise en scène, like what's in the frame. Like it just like I knew this already, but it just hammers it in of being like, oh my gosh, this is like it's just so undeniably important that I think it is, it's such a large part of cinematography is that collaboration with other departments and what's in your frame rather than just lighting and the gear and also like yeah, it's like you can shoot narrative projects with like untraditional tools
Hmm.
like a photo zoom and um like you don't need the biggest best gear to really like take it home. You just need really good, smart, dedicated people. Like our colorists, like, oh my gosh, I love the first pass. I was like, oh, this looks so good.
Like that's the rough
Great.
draft. Calm down.
Yeah, it was like, I was like, this is so sick. And just like, it's and Mind Body Spirit was such a wonderful project. It was like we worked, I don't think we ever went over 10-hour days.
Hmm.
It was like the shot list was so specific and thought out that it was a breeze to shoot. And on the last day, everyone's like looking around and be like, oh my gosh, this was so much fun. And like, we don't want it to end. And it's like, I think every filmmaker has felt that feeling at the end of a project and not just like trauma bonded, but like actually being like, this was a pleasant experience.
Right.
I think making a film and making it pleasantly does exist. And like I think one of the pitfalls is trying to fit a 1 million budget in $100,000, right? And you're screwed. You're just never going to have fun with anything. And your
Yeah.
product, I think, isn't going to be great. But I think that process of making the filmmaking process enjoyable and respectful for people and their time and realistic, it does show in the end of the day in the film. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned is like, wow, the process is so important in all of this. It is like this foundation that allows you to think creatively on set. And when you're avoiding stress, like stress is like just like the death of creativity in my opinion because you're in a fight or flight response. So that was one of the big lessons from Mind by Spirit, which was try to make it fun, think about making it fun, having intention of making it fun.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine too, like to your point about stress and all that is like having one location that everyone is operating out of has got to make getting into that flow state so much easier. You just show up to work, instead of like the worst thing in the world is when they go, oh, we have 4 company moves today. And you're just like, fuck. Like none of that's going to be fun.
It's not going to be fun. It's going to be so challenging, and you don't have the crew to support that.
Yeah.
And I get it. I always understand a producer's role in production. Like that, it shit is so hard. Like it is so hard to mitigate corralling that many people, your budget, your constraints. Everybody has an opinion. Like it's so easy to be a salty crew member. It's like too easy. I mean, like, oh, screw this producer. When the reality is like that producer's employing you, and it's like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And there is an extent to that, right? It's like, don't be malicious and predatory in your practices and how you work with other people. There is definitely, instances where that's very valid. But I think it's just like, I don't know. I really love the idea of holistic filmmaking, of not being like, this is my department, but being like, well, we actually don't need this light. Like it would be nice to have, but can we take that budget and put it into maybe helping another department where there's
Craft
really like,
services.
Craft services, yeah, and I think it's and it make sure you like treat your crew and respect your crew and listen to your crew too.
Yeah, I did want to ask. I know we're about to be on out of time here, but I did want to ask, like, not just this film, but um, the commercials you've shot and all that. Like, how do you go about being a department head? Like, how you mentioned like treating everyone with respect and all that. That aside, like, what are some ways that you keep everyone working the way that you want and doing what you need, and how do you run your department specifically?
I think a ton of it is prep and realistic expectations and being like, this is gonna just like making sure that when you hire people that you're really clear with your communication and your crew members that you're working with of this is going to be the challenging moments. This is where I think it's going to be easier. This is where I need help with, and this is where I think, really focusing on that collaboration. And then also like protecting your crew. Like if someone is bringing something up to your intention, like not being afraid to talk to a producer about that and level with them and finding appropriate times to talk to them about it. And doing that in a respectful way. Again, it's like everybody's stressed all the time, and you have to think about other people's perspective. Um, yeah, and just the idea of like realistic expectations being like, this is what we want to do. This is probably the way it's going to turn out. And in these instances, like it would be really fun if we pushed for something like this. And how do you think we could make it happen? And just having those like that open dialogue and prep so that everyone's on the same page, so that when you're out in the real world, it's not like you're trying to like, you're not trying to manage somebody's perspective where they thought it was going to be one thing, but it's a totally different other thing. And also like letting them know if it's going to be a shit show or not. Being like,
Right.
yo, this is like, I do not have the information. I'm frustrated about it. That's not necessarily an excuse, but I'm going to try my hardest to delineate this information to you so that it makes your job easier too.
Yeah, the one I've had to pull a few times is like,
Mm.
hey man, I got hired on this. I need help. They're offering you this. I'm gonna give you an extra 300 out of mine because this is gonna suck. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, seriously. And I think it's also like, you know, um, yeah, it's like you brought this up. Like every single shoot I've ever done, I always learn something new from. I think that's why it's like such a unique industry and career. It's like you're always learning, you're always in different situations. Like, and sometimes you're learning things that don't even have to do with filmmaking whatsoever, just like person to person relationships or how to communicate effectively. Or again, failure is always the best learning experiences. It's painful, but it's always the best. And I think, yeah. And oh, yeah, always like blowing your rate and taking those funds and injecting it into something else. And, I think people need to be paid properly. And like, you can't pay someone $250 if they're working 16 hours. Like that is ridiculous. And
Yeah.
it's like, yo, I think we actually could do 10-hour days, but it would just be a little different. And it would be, it'd be so nice.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine too, just for your guys, like there's only like 4 locations in Mind Body Spirit, so it was probably a little bit easier to like calm down, like think about it, talk to everyone, bounce ideas, and go, all right, that's good. Then just roll it. Because sometimes it's just like one shot, or like one camera setup. You go, okay, run that,
It was
see how that
wonderful.
goes.
Yeah. And sometimes it was literally that of being like, whoa, this is so easy right now. Like one of
Yeah.
my favorite frames is like, I think it's one light. We close these sheer curtains, and the whole room is so like warm. It's crazy warm because of the sheer curtains, the angle of the sun, the time of day. And then we added, I think, like maybe just return or maybe just like one light. Oh, dude, do you know the Falcon Eyes light?
Yeah.
Oh,
The
yeah.
the mat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Falcon Eyes is a big one, huge one for me. I'm always running around with the Falcon Eyes. I've slowly upgraded to an aperture. What is it, the F22? But the Falcon Eyes is an amazing light. I don't leave home without that either. But all that to say is like in a moment like that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. It works for the story. It's exactly what we want. It's so fun for us. We're rolling on it. And then there's other times where it's like, oh man, this is like a banana setup and it's going to take time. And we had a wonderful first AD who was also our producer, Jesse. And, I love first ADs as much as they frustrate me, and just in moments at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I love ADs because it's not.
First AD and production designer are like your two best friends besides your team.
Yeah. No, honestly, it's like, everybody's like the worst is doing being an ADP where you're the AD and the DP. And then it's like, like it stinks when you're shooting and you're like trying to move the train along and it's like, it's not working out. Just sometimes lack of communication with people. But it's always nice not to be the bad guy. You're like, oh, this is great. I'm ready. I'm set up. I'm hanging out.
Yeah. The to your point about the Falcon Eyes, I have this IntelliTech Megalight cloth. Have you seen that?
Oh, how are those?
So they're rad. I mean, like the output's crazy and the spectral quality is excellent. Mine like blew up right when I plugged it in, which they were like really confused. They're like, that's not a thing. And I was like, I don't know what, I must have done something, or maybe it got bumped in transit or whatever. So I just sent it back. But I think that's a me problem because everyone I've spoken to, it has not done that. Like just mine did that. So I think I did something terrible. But when it did work for that brief moment, it's just having a portable window.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And you just
cool.
And now they have a new version because mine's like the 2.0. Now they have a 3.0, which is RGB. It's got way more like you have like XY coordinates in the ballast. The ballast is smaller. Like the new 0.3 or 3.0 version is like out of this world good.
That's so cool. And it's like they have like different flavors, right? It's like they make like 4x4 and can you combine them?
No, I mean they're basically okay. I mean yeah, but basically they are combined at the factory. So they've got like the 1x1, they have a 2x1, a what's the math there? 2x2, and then the Megalight cloth is technically a grid of 2x3, but it comes out to like 4 feet by 3.5 feet.
Cool.
Something like that, or 4.5 feet by 3 feet, something like that. So again, it's literally just like a portable window. And if you don't use the case that it comes in and like the little, like if you T-bar it, basically, the whole thing fits in a backpack.
That's crazy. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Like the idea of a portable window is like perfect.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, that absolutely flew by, but I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, man.
Yeah, totally, Kenny. I'm so happy that we could do this. This was wonderful.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by Pro Video Coalition. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can do so on Patreon by going to frameandrefpod.com, where you can get all the episodes, and clicking the Patreon button. It's always appreciated, and as always, thanks for listening.